All right, good evening and welcome to the regular meeting of the Ad Hoc Committee for Short-Term Rentals. We should stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance.
It's like the one that blew up.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening. Second item on our agenda for this evening is public delegations. Is there anyone here from the public who would like to address our committee? Okay, come on up and just state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Debbie. Last name is Jet Harris. I live at 19 Center Street in Niantic. I'm also on the Zoning Commission, but I'm not here representing them at this time. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for being on this commission. It's highly important. A lot of communities are struggling with this situation, short-term rentals. I've noticed, I live in the Pine Grove section of town, and we've had a lot of incidences, more than 3, of our experience with short-term rentals. So we have noticed that it's very difficult to enforce them at this time. So moving forward, we would need a really good enforcement situation at Town Hall to make sure that the rules are being followed. In the section of Pine Grove, it's already a highly non-conforming neighborhood. Our houses are so close together, like inches, like sometimes literally inches away, some of them like maybe a foot or 2, 3 feet away. There were little huts, little shacks that were put up years ago. We also have a stipulation, and there's something in the deed that states the property was purchased, I believe, around 1882. They've always had some sort of governing body there, whether it was the Spiritualists, CSCMA, Connecticut Spiritualists. In 1975, PG&A was formed due to a legal legislation act that was done. I think it was number 148, but don't quote me on that. But so when it was formed, I mean, there's certain things that were in the deed and certain things that were always done legally, and one of them is for the use of Pine Grove residents and people that own houses, like they can come and, fish or whatever they want to do. They have to own property, though. So my question is that what would be the legal, you don't have to answer it, but I'm just saying in my mind, the legal part of this, like how would that look? Because the past experience we've had with people that were doing short-term rentals, most of the people in Pine Grove, they did follow it, but we also had a very active board that gently reminded people, hey, this is what it says, it was 30 days or more. That worked really well for our community. People were fine with that because you're going to get a family that's going to be there. When they did like weekends, like during COVID, people were doing it for weekends or a week. I mean, it was a nightmare. There was fighting in the streets. Police were called. It's not that they weren't called. We did call them. There was another time, too, where there was some people that were living there. They dropped off 7 children. Come to find out, there was 12 kids that were there. No adult supervision at all. We have the pictures and all the documentation for it because they were jumping off the fire dock. Well, the fire docks there are like a foot deep. Well, these kids were from New York City. They didn't know what they were, they had no idea. They'd probably never been there. There was like bathing suits left all over the lawn. There was pickup trucks that, because in Pine Grove, everybody knows whose car goes to where. We're so small. And there was trucks there. We didn't know what they were. And, of course, you couldn't say anything. But then when a neighbor went over there to warn the parents to say, hey, we want to talk to the parents, what's going on here, wanted to let you know they shouldn't be jumping off the fire dock, a little girl that was 11 years old answered the door and said, oh, are you the woman to come here to collect the money? Money for what? So this had gone on and stuff. The little girl was down there telling stories and everything else. Well, after that had happened, the very next day, there's no parents there. They're different. There were no adults there. They were kids, and the kids were. We have pictures because they were walking. We didn't know if the house burned or something happened or whatever. The kids were going down Pine Grove Road with their suitcases, and guess where they went? To the Motel 6. All of them went there. And then like 2 days later, there was a gentleman that got arrested for sex trafficking of kids at the casino, saying that his girls, those were his girls. At the casino, the guy said that those were his girls and he was taking them so they could meet their boyfriends. Are you serious? Seriously. So we've also, too, noticed that people are using short-term rentals for housing accommodations in between living in their car when they want to have like meals and they can cook. They're doing that as well too. They're not doing it just here, they're doing it everywhere. It's a problem everywhere. To have short-term rentals shorter than 30 days is really going to be taxing on our community, which is no longer a seasonal community. We are full-time. We have teachers, we have lawyers, we have everybody, just regular people just working regular 9-to-5 jobs. And when people go on vacation, they want to have fun. They want to make noise. They want to drink. They want to eat. They want to have people over. We have very limited parking. If you don't have parking at your house and you're parking at the ball field or down at the other end, down by the point, so it's going to be really, really hard for us. I don't know about the other beach communities. I mind my own community, but I do know that we are the closest. Our houses are just too close together. So we're asking that be considered, and we've already had problems before, and we do have certain things, especially with our homeowners. It's not an HOA. It's an association. They are structured differently. We want to make sure that the stuff in our deed and the stuff in our legal documentation is honored, because the people that we've had before, we had one person that was staying there, a short-term rental, and they had a big Great Dane dog, and the dog was defecating all over the ball field. Okay, Great Dane, big dog like this, and finally they stopped after, I was the president of the association. I said, we're going to charge you $10 a dog pile because we had to pick it up. We had a Christmas party, and there was 8 piles of dog poop out there. Now, that might be a little thing, but our kids really utilize that field all seasons long, and it was just everywhere. Everybody was complaining, which is unusual. I mean, you have a few complaints here and there, but it was hard to enforce that, because right now with the staff that the town has, we have stuff that's not even getting enforced. That's been on the books. For instance, I know for a fact that the town has worked very hard to get a certain property in Pine Grove to do what they're supposed to do. A judge ordered on it. A judge ordered the town to do it. Guess what? There's not enough staff to do it. They don't have a town attorney that can do it. They're too busy. And I understand all that. But in the meantime, the problems still exist. And the problems with the property still exist. And nobody wants to point the finger at their neighbor, because Pine Grove really isn't like that. We care about our neighbors. We help each other. We might fight against each other, but that's okay. If push comes to shove, we're going to help each other. So we're just asking for that consideration. And the legal part of it, because the 30 days and more was working, and we didn't have a problem with it. And Mr. Mulholland in zoning did enforce it. 2 times we've had the police out there, because in one of the houses on 1 High Street, the police were called. It was in the newspaper, and that was the girl that was murdered at the place. She lived in our community. We loved her. We took care of her. We helped in any way that we could. There was too many people living there in a 686 square foot house. There was 12 people. They cut down the trees on the field, put them in the window at Christmas time, and they were living up in the attic. These are types of stuff that we've had to deal with as a community. So yeah, and also too, real quickly, and I'll leave. The town, our residents, there was at least 30 of them that sent letters that you guys never got. And they were sent to zoning, and I saw the letters, so that's how I know for a fact that they were written. They were emailed to Bill Mulholland, so I was hoping that when this commission was formed, you guys would have gotten those letters, because that letter is just as important as somebody sitting in the chair. They took the time to write the letter, to give their opinion, and there was one person that wanted them, and the rest of them didn't want it. So I can say that in our community, we absolutely don't, but I'm not going to speak for every single one of them, but we've for the most part, Pine Grove residents have followed the 30 days or more, and it's worked out well for us. We haven't had any complaints on that. We're going to get families. That's what we've gotten, families, and they're going to be there. They kind of become part of us. They're invited to all of our stuff. Plus, we have activities. We have a big field day. We've been there since 1882 when that property was started. The spiritualists lived there first, but we've had the traditions, and we've kept them all these years, and we would like to continue to do so. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Harold Helgeson. I'm at 7 High Street in the Pine Grove area. The last time I was here and I spoke to you, I brought up the problem with insurance. The problem that we see in the future is that if these people, any person rents their home, we have one person that will put it in the paper, in their advertisement, they put a notice in saying that we have beaches that the people can use. We have a playground that people can use. And the problem I see is that if they have an accident on our property, we get sued, not the homeowner. And I don't think it's right for our community to have to carry a crazy amount of insurance to cover someone's business. Now, when we had the problem in town about golf carts, Pine Grove opted out of the golf carts. I think there's only 1 or 2 communities that decided to have them. We opted out because we didn't have parking in Pine Grove for the golf carts at the beaches and things. So I hope there is a way of opting out, which I asked you to do the last time for Pine Grove. We don't have ample parking like the man puts in his advertisements. And I certainly don't think the burden should be put on the people with the insurance problem. Everybody is suing these days. If they have an accident and they sue for more than what we're insured for, each individual homeowner has to ante up the money. And that's certainly not right. We have 150 homes, and it would be a real burden on everybody, because I'm sure we would have to create some lawsuits after it. We do have lawsuits probably like every other community that's in Niantic. Every time we turn around, somebody is suing the board. And we've never had that problem before. In the old days, someone broke an arm, they went and got it fixed, you never heard about it again. So please really consider this insurance problem. I didn't make this all up. This could actually happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Lori Shedd Nickerson, and I live at 5 Spring Street, and I also am part of Pine Grove. So I'd like you to consider the parameters that you might be setting for any type of Airbnb situation, short-term rentals, whatever we're going to be calling it. We do have a problem with, well, we had one Airbnb that was actually advertising it as a party house. So our party house is, the party house was bordered by people who literally you could touch each other like through the fence. And so it caused a lot of problems. There was a lot of partying going on, a lot of, nakedness going on, which those kinds of things. So, and we have a lot of children in our neighborhood. We have a lot of things like that. 30 days or more seems to be more reasonable if you are going to be putting something through. 30 days or more, people get to know your neighborhood. You get to know them as a community. You also get to know what our rules and regulations are, because it is really hard for us who live in Pine Grove to enforce what we have in our bylaws and our rules and regulations. People coming in for a weekend don't know, that you can't do this or you can do this, or, when you go, we have people who, the spiritualist church, people just cut through their property over time. Now, if you live in Pine Grove, you know that that's not part of Pine Grove, but you have kids like on bikes going down the hills. You have all different kinds of things, and then it's kind of up to us as residents or people who are on the board to go and hunt down these people and say, you can't do this, you can't do that. So it takes a lot of our time and a lot of our effort also. Also, I believe, well, I know that we're zoned a little bit differently than other beach communities, from what I understand. And I do believe that Airbnbs are businesses. And in Pine Grove, we're not zoned to have businesses there. unless I'm totally wrong. Somebody could tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think so, because it's a business and you're not supposed to be running a business in that area. So I'd like you to reconsider Airbnbs altogether, especially in our little beach communities, because it takes a real burden on us. It truly does. You know, we have to pay for beach cleanup. We, you know, have our playground, you know, remulch. We put in all nice little things and everything. And I'm not saying that people are coming and intentionally destroying anything, but it does happen, especially when you just have weekend people. So I'd appreciate it if, at least if you're going to do this, it could be at least 30 days or more, because that would be maybe kind of a little meeting point for all of us, in order for other communities to have their Airbnbs who want it. Pine Grove is very small. It's really a little different community. So, so I hope you would consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to come up and speak?
Are we submit- I guess that's how
Yeah,
we do it.
that's fine, yeah.
Free to go.
Ahead. Free to go. Go ahead.
I'm Sandra Forgione. I came to this meeting to get informed. Airbnb popped up across the street from me. It's just me and my daughter live in the house alone.
Your address,
What's,
ma'am?
yeah, what's your
Oh,
address?
I'm sorry. We're at 31 Edge Hill Road in Niantic, and we are also a beach community. We are Giant Neck Heights. So we're not the one up the hill, we're on the lower. So that house is literally stone's throw from the woods, the camping ground, the beach. We've had people that have been found dead, and you know, it's just in the past year twice. Don't know how, why, what. But there are people. One of our neighbors rents, but again, it's like you said, it's like a month or maybe like a week in the summer. But off season, they rent it for the whole season. So I'm thinking that you would have a background check, which doesn't, you know, it's not guaranteed anything. But the Airbnb across the street, it is rented 365 days of the year, and it's a revolving Motel 6, leave the light on. Every day, they're there a day or 2 days, maybe 3. Virginia, Texas. I'm shocked the lengths of where people come from. And my biggest concern was a lot of the houses have flipped over this year, and they're all going for the biggest prices, and people are buying them. The street above me, I've been told, I don't know for fact, just gossip, they have all gone Airbnb, and most of the street is. So my daughter, thank God, she just graduated from the high school. Her and all the girls, the bus stop is right there on the edge of the woods on this person's front lawn. They are out there to get that bus. The moon is still out and it's pitch black. And I'm saying, God Almighty, I have to get up. I am so afraid. You have no idea who's in there and is going to jump on the highway. And that's exactly what I think of as the casino or doing drugs. Or, I mean, we had a problem way back in the summer. People were like dealing drugs. They would go to the roundabout. You know, some pot. It wasn't anything crazy. And we hired police from our beach association. And then the other thing is, this is year round, every day. In the summer, they tend to bring lots of people, park all over the lawn, and then technically you're supposed to have a pass for your house, 2 for the house. Like, I'll go with the kids, and then somebody comes back or drive to the roundabout. Well, they're bringing, you go to the beach now, and you can't sit, and I'm like, my kid's been coming here since she's born, and she's 20, and I'm like, who are all these people at our beach? And I also, you know, with a renter, and they spill wine on your carpet, they don't care. It's not their house. You don't treat it the same. Well, I'm kind of getting that feeling at the beach. It's like all these people are here because it's that revolving door. I don't know if you have a background check. And like you said, I looked up the ad, and it's like, oh, you're a stone's throw walk from the beach and the park and the bocce or whatever the thing we have up the hill. And I'm thinking, are they going to go to our clubhouse too? And I don't recognize our beach anymore. We're actually to the point, I think we just may move. But I don't know if this is everywhere. I don't know if this is the future of but it's very unsettling. And like I said, this one specifically, I noticed he just put a for sale sign in the yard. I don't know what'll happen, but that scares me to death. I'm trying to be proactive, like he said. It hasn't happened yet, but I can't think of a worse thing to have a bunch of girls standing on the corner on this little tiny lawn in front of the park, the campground, with people coming in and out. So I'm just curious to know, do they do background checks? Do they ever see the person? It's just a lockbox like a realtor. And is it legal? Is this legal? Airbnb, is it legal? I don't even,
They seem to be legal.
because I was told, again, that's just gossip, that it's legal, that it's not legal, and that because we're a beach association, we have special rights to have different, I don't know, like we could make a decision or something? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to see. Is this going to be something that's, it just seems very unsettling every day to look out your window and you have no idea. There are people coming, and they come 4 in the morning, 1 in the, it's just Motel 6, leave the light on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can we ask what beach association?
That was Giants Neck
Giants Neck
Heights.
Giants Neck Heights.
Heights.
Thank
Yes,
you.
correct. Thank you. Okay.
Can I just add one more thing real quick? Or-
Yes, go ahead. Come on up.
I wouldn't normally do this, but I forgot to say it while I'm trying to talk fast.
Debbie Jett Harris, 19 Center Street. I just wanted to add, too, that people buy houses in certain neighborhoods. They tend to canvass them first. When you have these Airbnbs, multiple Airbnbs, number one, it's really hurt our town as far as affordable housing goes. There is none right now. Everybody's feeling that crunch, not just in our community, it's everywhere. But when you have all these Airbnbs, it takes away from the community feel, which that's why people move to certain neighborhoods. They want that community feel. They want to know their kids are safe. In Pine Grove, we've had kids 5 years old. They can go about wherever they want, and they're safe because all eyes are on them and they're safe. But it takes away from the community feel because it's getting to be more like people, investors really want to come into the beach communities and other places too. I would imagine if it's properties that are outskirts and they don't have neighbors, I meant really who's going to complain, they're not. But I know so many young families that moved into Pine Grove for the community feel. And if we keep allowing, and if we don't put a cap on it, or if we don't have some sort of regulation for it to allow a certain percentage, because they are businesses, they're making money, and they get to have all the amenities that we provide as regular residents, and they get it all and they destroy it. I mean, they've come on our playground, they've destroyed stuff, we fix it. I mean, it's all the time. We've had people shooting up at our beaches and they left their needles down there, and we know exactly who they were, but they didn't belong, they didn't live in our community and they weren't visiting. They were just there thinking they could clam. So we find them, we kick them off. But it just changes the face and the feel of a community when you have this revolving door of people constantly coming in there, when people just want to go and enjoy their place, and that's it. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Deb. Okay.
I want you to know I had nothing to do with any of these.
Anybody else this evening?
I was gonna say, it seems like
Yeah, one last comment. Sure, go ahead.
Sandra Forgione, 31 Edgehill Road, Niantic, Connecticut. That's another thing. I knew the Airbnb was just like revolving every day. I didn't know that there was a 30-day rental. I never saw that before. I know our neighbors rent to someone off season. So let's see, it's like Labor Day to Father's Day. So like September to June, and then their family comes in the summer. And like I talked to those people, and you made a point that they go from the cottage to the Motel 6. I asked them, they do. They rent it, and then they have a trailer, or their friend has a trailer. They live in the trailer, and then they take up another month, or maybe not. And like I said, I never thought about that. It's going to affect the value of my house, because who wants that? I didn't. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Well, thank you for your comments. And just for the record, the committee won't engage in a back and forth with you during public delegations, but we take the information you have given us and process it and discuss it elsewhere in our meeting. So, but thank you for the commentary. Thank you. Okay, we're on to item 4 on the agenda, which is reports of co-chairs.
Item 3.
Item 3. Oh, sorry, approval of minutes. I
ahead of myself. Approval of minutes, so
I
our last
move we-
meeting.
I move we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
Perfect, thanks.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, and let's, any comments on the minutes, any changes, corrections, anything? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of November 18th, that was our last meeting of 2024,
Yes.
signify by saying aye. Any abstentions?
Yeah, I'll have to abstain, I was not here.
Okay, 2 abstentions, Ann and Dan. Okay, great, thanks. All right, okay, item 4, reports of co-chairs. Gary, do you have anything?
No, it's been a busy month, so no, I don't have anything to report.
Okay. I don't really have much. One point, I did find the videotape of that meeting, the cost meeting, as I recall. It was a autumn meeting that the organization had, and there was an update about land use issues for municipalities, and the Wibby case came up. The actual meeting date of that meeting was in October. I think it was like October 16th. And so the Wibby case came up very briefly. 2 attorneys from Halloran and Sage spoke a bit about Wibby and the new legislation we have in Connecticut allowing municipalities to enact ordinances concerning short-term rentals. But there was nothing that we haven't already heard, so no new viewpoint there. Just the one point made by one attorney was that, yes, indeed, go forth and go zone if you're concerned about short-term rentals. There's nothing prohibiting you. Wibby certainly doesn't prohibit you from zoning. So that was the message I took from their short presentation. Okay, so I guess we'll jump down to agenda item 5, which is continued discussion of the answers to the questions posed in that memo that Gary and I asked 2 questions concerning preference for short-term rentals or not, right? That was and what evidence do you find most compelling? So we had gotten pretty far with those in attendance at our last meeting. The 2 questions, again, for the record: what's the most compelling evidence this committee's gathered apart from your personal experiences to support allowing short-term rentals in town? And the second question: the most compelling evidence that the committee's gathered, again, apart from your personal experiences, to ban short-term rentals and to allow only longer-term rentals, that is greater than 30 days. So those were the 2 questions that we found to be pretty critical to our charge, right, in coming to they were basically threshold questions. So, and we heard from quite a few of our members at last meeting, but we haven't heard from everyone. So I'm not sure, does anyone have any other, and Ann, I had read your memo. Do you want to revisit that for a minute since you're here? Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have any more to add to it than I had in it. It's just what I said. I think they've proven successful historically. I think in some of the beach communities, I feel like those communities that have their own zoning should be responsible and set their rules and enforce them. The rest of the town, I think they should be either banned or 30 days or less. More and more people are coming forward to me anyway in different parts of town, being against it. We've heard a couple tonight. I don't know, that's basically what I think. I think they should register and get a permit. I think the cost of that should cover any enforcement we need to have. I don't know, I think keep it simple. But in thinking of ordinance versus zoning, the one thing about zoning that actually might be a concern is the zoning board turns over every 2 years. So,
it could be reversed or changed every 2 years, where an ordinance might be more.
More permanent, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
But that's just, one thing to think about.
Do you, I mean, now that you've brought up the topic, do you have any thoughts about ordinance versus zoning in terms of like the state allowing now municipalities to enact ordinances? There's no meat on the bones on that statute, I have to say. It's very general in its language, but it does do that, and there's no discussion, and there wasn't in the legislative history because I looked up what I could, on how does that impact land use regulation generally. I mean, how does it conflict? I mean, you could picture going two ways, like your zoning board wanting to do X, and then your board of selectmen perhaps not being on the same
I mean, I think the
page.
two have to complement each other.
They should.
Yeah.
But that's an interesting problem.
Yeah.
You know, there seems to be almost a little carte blanche in the language of that statute, if I can describe it as that. And yet we're so used to land use issues being dealt with by through zoning, historically, legally. So that's an issue, right? Yeah, there might be very well a good place for the ordinance, to fill in. We have such a complicated, I think, legally complicated, and you begin to hear some of that tonight. I will say this, that to me, there are still outstanding legal issues that we have as a committee. The one that concerns me is actually the one that came up tonight, which is if you've got these beach communities that do not have their own zoning, but have authority as associations given to them by the state. They're not quasi-municipal. They don't have that moniker, let's say. But they've gone ahead and they've tried to regulate themselves. Your community, Greg, for sure, Oak Grove.
We have the same problems, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I think it's definitely an issue.
I just feel like you can't do one size fits all for Niantic, because there are some areas that definitely don't want them, some definitely do, and somehow I think we have to accommodate, what's right for the most people.
And it's interesting that, let's see, well, John Salino's not here tonight, but Black Point, the old Black Point, not his Black Point Beach Association, but the old Black Point falls into a similar category in terms of how they've allowed shorter term rentals, which is over 30 days in Old Black Point. So, and I've spoken to a couple of people there about that and how it works, so that people who have those homes maybe through their family, and the taxes are high, and the way they deal with it is they might go away for 6 weeks, whatever it is, 4 weeks, 6 weeks in the summer, stay with a friend, and then, the income that they get from that shorter term rental, right, over 30 days, is how they pay their taxes. So it seems like each beach community, and I think we covered this very well in the report, if I can say, each beach community seems to have a certain viewpoint. Last meeting we heard from John Salino again about his preference for, and they have that in their zoning, for the 7 days or more, looking at it. And when one woman was speaking here, it was Sandra speaking, I believe. I thought of your beach community because you have that setup where there's that fee that is now being paid to help when there are short-term rentals. Okay, so you're going to use these different facilities that we have in Oshkosh Hills Club. Let's say you use the courts or whatever various things that you have. So you've kind of thought through some of the stuff that they're experiencing, and now you have this system more newly instituted. So it just reminded me of your situation. I don't know if you have some of the same issues, but there's definitely a hodgepodge, you know, little quilt that's emerging and that's emerged. In fact, when I was preparing for this meeting, I just went back to the north end of town or the central end of town, which we don't really have a handle on yet, you know, really in terms of what people want. But just the beach communities alone, you know, are very, very unique. So that's an issue. Does anyone else have anything to add about compelling, you know, information that we got from the public through our public hearings or through letters, emails, whatever?
Can I just ask,
Yes,
Ann,
go ahead.
just so I'm clear,
Yes.
you're interested in having the beach communities take care of themselves with respect to this issue?
I think the ones that have their own zoning should,
Okay, the ones with their own zoning, that's not all of them, right?
unless there's a way for the others to somehow legally, you know,
That's not gonna happen, right?
then
Okay.
then they can't do
All right,
it.
so they're dumped in with the rest of the town,
Yeah.
to use eloquent language.
So if I may,
Yes.
it's unfortunate that Pine Grove decided to show up a year into the process.
I'm sorry, say that
I
again?
say it's unfortunate that the Pine Grove representatives decided to show up a year into the process. The fact is, we didn't hear anything tonight that we haven't heard before. And I assured Paul that I didn't ask them to come, so it's not a setup. But,
They did come to a hearing before.
you know, we need to, I think we can and should recommend, we gotta keep in sight the fact that we're making recommendations to the Board of Selectmen. They can do whatever they want. They can say that's not enforceable. They can say we don't have the resources. They can say we don't have the money and thank us for our time. That's fine. But we need to make, as somebody said, keep it simple. I think you had said that, I think, and keep it simple. And as you know, I can go back to what I've recommended before, but I'm sure we'll get to that. And by the way, I would really like to say thanks to Gary for making the spreadsheet. I
Yes.
think it really kind of digitizes it and makes it a lot easier to look at. But the fact is, again, we didn't hear anything new tonight that we haven't heard before. Pine Grove thinks they're special. Oak Grove Beach thinks we're special. Giants Neck thinks they're special, and they are because they have Paul as president. But they can't be that special. You know, we are all citizens of East Lyme. You know, we are all involved in the town and in our government, in our laws and in our ordinances, and so I think there needs to be a town-wide approach to this, but I think necessarily whittles it down to a few clear-cut things that we can recommend, as opposed to nuts and bolts for everybody and everything, if that makes any sense. I mean, I don't think we can have separate rules for Pine Grove and separate rules for Giants Neck and separate rules for Giants Neck,
Heights.
the other
Heights.
Giants Neck.
Heights, you're saying?
Heights,
Right,
yes.
correct.
You know, and of course Crescent Beach has their own zoning, so that's kind of a unique.
Yes.
But just because these beach communities, I'm sorry if I interrupted where you were going.
That's okay.
Just because
I
these
needed to
beach
stop.
communities
Thank
have
you.
their own zoning, doesn't mean they want to take on something that has all the hairs on it that this does, right? The short-term rental, there's nothing short-term about it, right? The short-term rental issue, it's wide, and depending on what we may say, we really don't have a huge issue here in East Lyme right now, or we may say we do. But either way, I think if we don't do anything, we will find out later, and it's harder to put the cat back in the bag, maybe? If that's the right term, I don't know, cat, crocodile, whatever the thing is, depending on where you're from.
I agree completely, and again, we're making a recommendation.
Yeah, that's all.
You know, we're not
That's
doing
fine.
it. We're just making this
Right.
recommendation.
But we need to hold a mirror up to the board, because, the selectmen, because I remember Crescent Beach, and the only reason it came to mind is because they talked about here golf carts, right? They came up with this golf cart rule that said, hey, but you beach communities, you can decide what you want, just tell us what you want. We had a referendum in our group, in our beach community. We decided we didn't want it. We went back to the town and said, we don't want it. They said, fine, that's good. Next thing we know, we got golf carts coming through. People that live in our community, right? And we said, well, how'd you get that? Well, we went to the town hall and asked for it. Whoever was giving out the certifications had no idea what was asked for. And then when you call the town, they don't have time. If they don't have time to handle a handful of golf carts, how is the town, we really need to reflect back to the town the impact this could have on them. They can't enforce this with the people they have here right now. And enforcing it is not the big issue, right? The problem is, if we say it's not allowed, that makes the enforcement harder, right? Because now you got to find the people that are not doing it. Or the community's coming to you and saying, these people over here aren't obeying the law. You need to look into it. If they can't look into a golf cart, how are they going to find the time to do that? So I think we need to reflect that to the selectmen, that the decision they make may impact how they develop the town structure to implement it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no.
I mean, that's one of the big things that I took out of if you're asking that question, is that, and I guess I don't know how the whole grandfather issue works when there really is no record of who is renting, right? People come and swear on a stack of Bibles I was renting prior to 2024, or how does that work?
They pull their receipts from Airbnb.
Yeah,
That's how it does. Okay.
Yeah, you probably
So there's
show that record.
But again, that's for the implementing side. That's for the selectmen. We make a.
Um,
Sorry, I was making it more complicated. You were trying to say keep it simple. I agree with you on that.
you
That's
know,
all.
Is Greg finished?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thanks.
Just a point about Pine Grove. We wrote about it in our about Pine Grove, and so I think Debbie Jed Harris just illuminated a little more, gave a little more background. Their dilemma or their problems were summarized here, and there was a person. I recall someone from, and you may also, the rest of you may, at our first public
At our
hearing.
first hearing, there were
Yes.
2 people from Pine Grove that's
Yeah, so.
Yeah, Debbie Jed Harris
and
was
this,
one of them.
and this gentleman
Has
as
spoken
well.
before.
Yeah, yes. So we've heard it. So it just a reiteration, and, you know, I mean, that's fine. So I guess, so what I'm gonna do, do you think we're kind of done with item 5? Gary, and would you want to go and move on to
Yes.
item 6?
Moving on is always a good thing.
Yes, moving on. So we'll move on, and item 6 is just our continued discussion of areas of agreement and difference, and we've got some, but that's you know, it's a healthy thing. I just want to get that on the record. I think it's a very healthy thing. I would be you know, upset if we all agreed on everything. It would seem strange to me. So that the conversation, the hashing out is a good thing. And thank you, yes, Gary Ferrugia, for drafting the survey that begins to get us landed on certain, you know, concrete topics for sure. So
Did you get one? There you go. Thank you.
I think if you'd like to use the survey, I certainly think if we can go through this preferred course of action set of questions, even the first 2, like I'll call it question 1, question 2, when you've got the A, B, and C parts, but preferred course of action, and then limits on number of STRs permitted. Before we get to nitty-gritty on minimum nights and permitting and, you know, some of these other things, I think those first 2 questions, you know, kind of allow us perhaps to better answer what we were trying to do in question 5, you know, once we've addressed the threshold questions. So, yeah, so, I mean, we can start with preferred course of action. Let's just start with the first one. Does anyone feel like we should stay the course and just, you know, leave everything alone? Like, as in no action, no change? Anybody, do you have any takers on that?
I think counsel, Attorney Zamarka, if I recall correctly, said that because it's not mentioned, then Whitty kind of fills that hole and says that they are allowed. That was his take on that, yes?
Yeah, so you're heading where I'm thinking as well, yeah.
So I'm thinking that one may not be necessary.
What you're saying is it's, because of the Wibby decision, we need to do something.
So you're
Is
saying
that-
stay the course actually means STR is allowed, rather than what's written here?
Yeah, and do we have that?
No.
Total allowance?
We do have total allowance.
Yes,
Where is that?
so that would be,
But stay the course was, in my thoughts, let's not do anything. Let's not recommend anything. Let's just keep it the way it is.
And we talked about that, right.
Which is fine as an option, we just need to be clear here as to
Right.
what it means.
Right.
And I think what we're saying,
So when you drafted this, Gary, what did that mean? Allowing all short-term rentals or not allowing?
It meant we're not changing a thing. They're not mentioned, therefore they're not allowed. Wink, wink, we know they exist,
Okay,
gotcha,
but
yeah.
we're not gonna
So
do
status
anything about
quo,
it. Right.
status quo, okay. So when I,
We said,
yeah, when I looked at that, I thought that's what you were thinking, but I also was thinking about the Wibby decision that, the reason why I guess I would just say it's hard not to do anything because Wibby has now opened that door that suggesting that you really can't infer things, in your zoning regs. It's a very, rather than our argument about permissive use in zoning,
Right.
and if you don't say it, it's not allowed. Wibby kind of suggests, well, you have a single family residence. Well, this can mean all this, it's hard to narrow it unless you specify. So it does suggest that inaction may not be, in view of Wibby, inaction may not be an option anymore. That's
So-
what I'm saying.
right, so the next two are kind of, one's a total ban, one's a partial ban. And then the next two I'm reading as approvals, you approve them. Basically, the number is unlimited, right? There's no restrictions on
At
number
least in this
of
section.
Well,
Section.
That
on
goes
this
to the
section,
next
it was just,
group.
I was thinking, how do we want to approach this?
Correct.
Oh,
No, I get
not-
you. Big
so
picture.
not-
Yeah, this is
How
big
many do
picture,
we
which is
want?
great.
Right, big
Perfect.
picture.
Yeah,
I
perfect.
get that. All right.
Okay.
And then I guess short-term rent, the last one in that preferred course, short-term rentals equals long-term rentals. That's, anyone can do what they want with it. It's a right to rent a property.
A right to rent a property, no,
Right.
no words about whether it's short-term or long-term.
may I just clarify one point regarding
Yes, go
Attorney
ahead, Paul.
Zamarka? On August 26th, he said that the Supreme Court upholds the right to short-term rental because signs are permitted to say for rent. And because we permit signs to say for rent, therefore short-term rentals are allowed under that, if long-term rentals are allowed, if academic rentals are allowed. That was his comment. Even though it is not specifically mentioned in the regulations as permissive. He said that's the door that opened, and that's so therefore,
Yeah.
number one really doesn't apply because the
Yeah,
Supreme Court
that's
said,
yeah,
si-
we were in
signs
agreement
are allowed, now they're
on that.
allowed, so.
It did pre-Wibby, and that's what we were
Yes,
talking
right,
about. But
right.
then
But
Wibby came in
Wibby-
and,
We're talking
Right.
about moving forward to the Board of Selectmen with a list of recommendations. Doesn't have to be, in my view, we are for, it's 6-1, or we are against, it's 2-7. What I think we have to say, there's a lot of conversations about for. Here are the conversations about against.
Right.
You guys gotta go through this drill all over again. You gotta
Yeah.
get public
They have to
hearings, you
be
gotta do all of that if you're
comfortable
gonna
themselves.
perform an ordinance, so.
correct.
So I just wanted to say that that's what Attorney Zamarka said. I love this section of what you're doing, this
Yes,
sectioned off
yes.
thing. And
That's good.
I thought what we were gonna do was just go down and check, Ann says she wants it not allowed, Paul says he wants it allowed, check the thing, go through the survey, and then we have
see.
something to look at. That's kinda how I
Yeah.
Well,
did mine.
that was my thought too.
Yeah.
And I actually built this trying to come to terms with where my head was.
Yes.
And that
fine.
got me down the rabbit hole of, well, what have we heard?
Yep.
So
All right.
going through all the minutes, going through all the public comments, going through each of us individually having opinions, the debates we've had, also the other towns that we've surveyed and found. So I just tried to glean what I could from all of that. And I don't know if this is 100% thoroughly captured, everything we've talked about. But
I
it
think it
seemed to me
captures a
like
lot, you know.
it seemed
and
to me
that's-
like a good
Yeah, a
starting
starting
point.
place. That's how I view it, and a very good starting place. Yeah, I thought it was a way to begin to ask the specific tough questions. We've already kind of gone through the general tough questions, and I think we need to.
And to that point that Paul made about what the Attorney Zakara said,
Yes.
that's kind of what treat STRs and LTRs equally. That's
Yes.
what my thought was on
Okay,
that.
sure.
That if we have something that says you can put a for rent sign up, that seems to apply for short-term or long-term. It seems to mean short-term and long-term are allowed.
Yeah.
I personally think there's no way out of this for anybody at the Board of Selectmen level to not include a zoning definition in what's happening, because now the genie's out of the bottle, as he said down
Yes.
there, in terms of long-term rentals. They're not mentioned either, so.
No, I agree. It should be
So I think
clearly
there should be
stated.
some zoning
Yeah.
definitions, and I've listed where I thought those definitions could be, if you'd like those. And then an ordinance that outlines not necessarily a permitting process, but a registration process, so that the two work hand in hand, and we get what we need to get, which is how do we get a hold of people if there's a problem, where are the certain things that we have to do. Those are the things that need to be identified, and I think the only way to do it is in both of the, I think that's what's going to happen, whether it happens this year, next year, or the year after. Yeah.
Because even though our charge wasn't to investigate long-term rentals, it's now part of the analysis because of WIBI, and they're going to have to make that decision to treat them as they would short-term rentals or treat them otherwise, and zoning as well. So,
Having served on zoning,
Yes.
and having been a chair
Yes.
for a couple of years, you can't possibly think of every situation
No.
to come in when you establish these things. So this is how you find out that there's a discrepancy in the regulation. People are living this way,
yes.
and the regulations actually said, oh,
Yeah.
no, you can't do that, but nobody talks about it.
And
So it's an easy fix if everybody puts it together.
yes, and it is something that can be mentioned in the addendum we've got to put together for the initial report. No problem with that. I think the only thing is, as a body, we didn't seek information specific to long-term rentals, but that can be just mentioned in the paper. That wasn't our charge, but guess what? It's come up, and you're probably going to have to deal with it. So,
Our charge was to recommend
Yes.
fixes.
right, exactly.
So,
Okay.
just if we want to start the conversation, I checked approve STRs by ordinance and zoning regs, registration and definitions. That's what I checked under my name, under that first block of things. I didn't
So
talk to
you-
any of the other stuff. I put a check mark there, and then I added ordinance equals registration, zoning equals definitions.
What did you check?
He's wanted to do
along with that.
The fourth one?
approve STRs by ordinance and zoning regulations.
That's you, Paul, the fourth one down?
Yeah. And Greg.
Greg,
And Greg,
And Greg, okay.
I know it's strange that we think the same, but that's where we are.
It's okay.
It's taken a while, but you're coming.
no surprise to me.
Politics makes strange bedfellows. I've heard that said before. Not implying
I think
anything.
the devil's gonna be in the details and what is on the registration and what the definitions say, but I think that's the path to the answer.
I don't.
So what do you think, Gary?
I am, if I had to do this today, based upon the evidence that I've heard, or the lack of evidence benefiting the town by short-term rentals, I would vote for somewhere either 2 or 3.
So I'm going to put you right on the border of 2.
Either one of them.
and
2 or
3.
I'm checking both for myself.
Okay.
2 or 3.
All right, we'll do that.
I would put
I'm still
myself.
open.
Okay.
I'm still open to listen to
Okay.
things, grandfathering certain things in.
Sure. How about Anne? How about you?
I checked 3 and 4. I think those could be combined.
Right,
What did
you're
you
at
say,
the
Ann?
end.
I checked 3 and 4.
3 and 4?
And 4.
Okay, I'm with 3.
You're with 3.
Yeah.
This is,
Who was that?
right.
Dan?
You're
It's
Dan. It's Dan.
is 3.
Dan is 3. Okay. Gary, how about yourself?
I am approve STRs by ordinance and zoning,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm also interested in dropping the distinction between LTRs and STRs.
Okay.
I don't have a firm handle
Sure,
on that,
but
but I
you want
also
it
don't have a
addressed.
good reason not to.
Okay, so you would like that addressed, is
Right.
what you're thinking.
I
Okay.
guess
Yeah, and I
I
could-
could have some clarity because LTRs start getting mentioned later here. In your definition, when you put this together, what do you think LTRs are? Greater than 30 days?
Greater than 30.
Oh, greater
Okay.
than 30.
Okay,
So,
got
okay,
it.
so.
Yeah,
I'm
I agree
gonna-
with Gary on that.
Okay, so
TRs.
that's what I have to have in my head when we're doing this, okay?
So, yeah, because there's this, there are certain phrases used definitionally, and one is longer-term rentals, and that's over 30 days. And then long-term is considered like maybe academic or a year. Okay. So, but in this survey, LTRs are greater than 30 days. Okay.
Where were you at, Ann?
You're up, Ann.
Oh, I'm up. Where's John Salino when I need him here? Okay. All right. So, just check everything. No. It's okay. Let me tell you, I have, in my head, I have probably checked all of these.
Oh, I thought you meant for John.
No, that's, yeah, so John's not here. Okay. So, I tend to number 3, but I am very open to approval of them either through zoning, as in putting them in certain zones in town, and I've always liked Ann's ideas of in the business district or mixed use areas, trying to avoid them in certain residential communities. So I'm kind of a bit of a mixture there. I want to respect, the big issue I have, and I've said it a few times, I really want to respect the zoning authority, A, that we have in the town generally, B, for the 3 beach communities that have their zoning, even though I don't think you have to, accommodate every nuance out there within the beach communities and every preference and this and that. It's interesting that where there are the most of the short-term rentals, you have this patchwork of preferences, and I have yet to see the legal memo to us that really gives appropriate detail that tells me that Pine Grove can't do what it's doing, that Oak Grove can't do what it prefers in those regulations that your community drafted, sort of to mirror what Black Point was doing. I just need to see chapter and verse. If you're going to tell me that they have no authority, then I need to see more information, more detail legally. Okay, so that's where my head is stuck, and I would feel better if I knew the answer to that question.
So what are we checking for you?
I'm with Paul. What did that mean? Is that 3 and 4 or 3 and 5? What do you
You're
So-
not putting Ann in a box, right?
Yeah, so you can put me in 3, but I'm also tending to, 4 or 5, depending on this whole ordinance thing with the state statute. I've got some issues with that too. But what I'm saying is partial ban at worst, but I am thinking about how we can properly allow short-term rentals where they have existed and where they're desired. That's, and I'll make
So
one
is
last.
that ordinance and zoning, or just ordinance?
I would say let's do by zoning. Let's just stick with that. And
Zoning with no ordinance?
yes, just for now. I mean I'm leaving that open.
So the issue with that approach is as we've discussed before, that if we do pre-existing non-conforming gets to continue, but nobody new can do it, like I couldn't start renting my house, I think that's just patently unfair. And I think it's unfair to all the citizens of East Lyme.
Well, it really depends on where you're beginning your analysis. You know, if you're beginning your analysis where you're trying to figure out the general benefit to the community at large, affecting the most number of people, and this is something I wrote in that second memo that I wrote, that from a policy perspective, you do want to capture and do the most for the largest number of people. So that's where my head's at on that, you know, and I feel as though, and I went through an analysis of the financial benefit and the historic, you know, the history, all these things, and I didn't find that stuff as compelling. I won't reiterate it here, but it's in that memo.
Can I
Yeah,
suggest
sure.
maybe for this meeting that if we're going to go through this, we go through this?
Yeah,
And then I could tabulate everything.
okay.
And if things are in here that nobody likes, we don't talk about them
Sure,
anymore.
okay, yeah,
And
that's
then
fine.
before the next meeting, we'll say, okay, you know, these two things are high on a majority of people's list.
Okay,
And then we have actual debates about a
sure,
shorter
that's fine.
list.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so, the person we're missing here is John Salino,
Right.
but,
We can reach out to him.
yes,
See,
that would be
I
helpful.
guess what you're advocating is we come up with check marks here rather than you have to advocate your position for why the check mark.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
that's fine, that's
Yeah,
fine.
because and then we'll just be able to tabulate.
Okay.
And what's that? What's the new type of voting?
Rank choice.
Ranked choice voting. There we
Rank
go.
choice, oh Lord, okay.
That's some liberal idea.
Well, yeah, but
Down with that, baby.
it's on its way.
No comment here.
Now, wait a minute, I think the issue is, so Gary, people are trying to understand these little,
Yeah, I mean, we may have to stop.
I think we talk about them, but let's just
Yeah,
briefly talk about our feelings and go to section 2
Yeah,
and go all the way through, get
okay,
the
so we're
information.
good, we're
And then
good
I
with
think we-
section 1,
Then we
okay.
get,
So let's go to section 2,
so
which
if you want
is,
me to start, because I started
Yes,
before.
go
I
right
put,
ahead, Paul.
I put 5% as a town-wide limit. Whether that can work or not, I don't
Okay.
know, but the reason I chose that was there's about 9,500 homes in town. If you say round it up to 10,000 by the time things get built, 5% is a reasonable number, and it's more than what we have, so people can grow into it, but it caps it at a certain number. And it's a
Interesting,
completely arbitrary number, and I'm not sure
Well, so is 10%.
how we
It
get
was
there,
just
but,
an IE.
I just thought 10% of,
Yeah.
of 10,000 is 1,000, so 5% is 500.
starting the discussion.
okay,
Okay,
That
All
was my
right.
point.
I checked off, even though based on my answer in block number 1, it really doesn't.
I can't hear you down here, I'm very sorry.
Okay, no problem. Limits on number of STRs. I checked set caps by neighborhood. I was worried about a town-wide limit. If we went to like 10%,
Okay.
that could mean that every single beach home could be a short-term rental, right? So that's what I was concerned with, right?
I see. Makes
If all
sense.
500 in your case were at the beaches, and all of them ended up being at Crescent Beach, then
Yeah.
you lost your community, right? And I think we're trying to set this up so we still have some skeleton of a community there instead
That's a
of
good
all things. So that's why I said set caps by neighborhood, and that's enough for me. Okay.
okay. We can just go down the pike here, yeah, let's, Ann, what do you think? about
I
what-
also said
Caps.
set caps by neighborhood in the sense that I think if it's in mixed use, there would need to be a cap. I think if it's in a general residential, maybe there are none. But then in the beaches that have their own zoning, they set their own cap, whatever that may be.
Okay, so let's get you.
So yours was
yours. It's
neighborhood?
Neighborhood, yes,
Neighborhood.
it's the third one. Okay. Yes, Gary?
My cap is by either grandfathering or cap at 0, so I'm not going to participate in that one. However, I think,
You have another line, not any of these? Is that what you're saying?
say again?
None of
Yeah.
the above?
You're in the
need
same case as me. My block one vote was partial ban, just grandfathering, right? So,
Yeah.
so having a 10% limit, 5% doesn't really match
Right,
up.
right.
But if I don't get my way in block number one, what would I like in block number two?
Right,
That's the
right.
way I looked at it.
Right.
Rather than saying, no,
Yeah.
I need to make a choice in
Right,
each
right,
block.
so I think probably the most reasonable one in there is I like the argument, the cap set by neighborhood. So I'll do a very weak support.
A half a check mark.
Okay.
Dashed,
Half the check.
dashed check mark.
All right. Okay, so, I'm just not a fan of caps, like, I just think that they can be very readily challenged, so.
So don't think about the
No.
the legality.
No,
Just
think-
kind of the idea.
Okay, well, again, it doesn't fit, it's an NA for me, not applicable because of some of the other things, but if we were going in that direction, you know, I would say, do a percentage limit, so,
Of the townwide, or,
townwide.
Town.
I mean, if you're going in that direction, but not because
so you're weak on that.
it's
too.
very weak for me, yeah.
Not to put words in your
No, but it's true. This whole thing, yeah, doesn't.
All right, Mr. Ferrugia.
I'm at this moment for no caps, with a review in a certain period of time, because I'm not convinced that STRs are going to overtake the town or the neighborhood. We haven't seen much of this in the news lately, but what we have seen is that people who are using Airbnb are getting fewer bookings year over year. And in my own lived experience in my neighborhood, that happened to a woman who had bought a home and turned it into an STR. And first year was fine, second year was bad, third year she sold. So I'm not convinced in my mind, like, actually I've changed my mind from when I first sat on this board to where I am now. I'm not so sure that the town is in danger of being overwhelmed by this. So my vote for this right now would be no caps.
So, for those of us that wanted, you know, partial bans or maybe, you know, soft on these
Sure.
approvals, that might be the better check mark for me anyway. I think is the no caps at the start.
It's been 32 seconds. You just changed your choice.
But I think that Mr. Ferrugia gave compelling argument.
Oh, okay,
there.
Wow.
there you go. There you go.
I
I
will
was
agree.
a newspaper editor
That's
for
right.
40 years.
That's
No
right.
one ever told me.
So I think that is more appropriate, and I see where you were going with these, but I mean, I could do either one, but I think that actually hits the mark for me a little better.
Who's next?
Yeah.
Who hasn't
Mr.
voted?
You can have
Mr.
two check marks.
Oh, that's true, but I'll leave it.
There's no
Guess we're
rules.
just Greg.
All right, let's
do
do
you
that.
think?
Oh, let's
Two
hear what
checks.
McIntyre
One
has to
agreeing
say.
with you, Paul,
He's a
and one
no-
agreeing
he's a
with
no
you,
limit.
Gary.
All right.
But I
What do
do
you got,
like
Greg?
your argument.
Like the good Republican that I am, I vote for no caps and let the market take care.
I love it.
Oh, so that's no limit. Okay, got it. Where's the
No,
others?
no caps at start, sunset
All right,
review after
so
3 or 5
Greg,
years.
you're over
Okay,
here.
got it.
Oops.
Okay. All right, so, all right, we got through that one. All right, and again, Mr. Salino will let us know about his vote there. Minimum nights of stay at an STR, that's the third topic.
I'll start. I put a check mark for 30 days.
I'll do 30 days. If we have to have this.
Yes. Yes, oh, I'm
I have
sorry.
a question. I just went and picked up my daughter from work. This meeting ends at 9, but this meeting is lots of different topics.
We have an agenda, and you could take a look
Okay.
at the agenda.
And the minutes of this meeting
Oh,
are going to be...
We have there's an agenda for you, but yes, we do have a web page, right? If you go to the town website, and you go under government, under ad hoc, short-term rental committee, we have a whole, you
Okay,
click
it's
that
called
on, short-term rental
it's not
committee.
called Airbnb. And
So,
Well,
if-
we're not here to
if I
answer
may,
that
one-
type of
Can't really-
question.
Okay.
Yeah,
So-
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So how do I find that out?
You'll probably go to Airbnb website.
Right, go to their
See
platform.
what they do. Or there's hundreds of these companies that,
Okay.
The
Yeah.
town
Yeah.
has no regulations in this area, so you'll have to go directly to the people who are doing the renting.
Yeah, or speak to
You could ask
someone
the
that you
people
know
behind
that
you.
rents and that you trust.
But when I left, when I spoke to the very nice people that were here that were concerned about their community where our children are, they told me that you, Mr. Formica, live in my neighborhood and own 8 or 10 Airbnbs. Is that true? Are you in Giant Neck Heights?
I do not live in Giants Neck Heights. I do not own 10 Airbnbs. I own
like 8 or 10 Airbnbs in my neighborhood.
I own one short-term rental in Giants Neck Beach.
Okay, thank you, I appreciate your.
I also own a
Everybody
number
tells
of
you different stuff and you're just like.
Yeah.
What?
I own a number of
I get it.
long-term rentals as well.
Okay,
I
thank
own a
you.
commercial rental as well.
Thank you, because I'm like.
All right, good luck with
and
it.
he has disclosed that from
Yes.
day one.
Yes.
If you would like,
That's what I'm saying.
No,
It's my
right.
first time ever.
if you would like the agenda and some
Thank you.
information, and then
Thank
Brooke is the assistant town clerk.
Okay.
Brooke is the assistant town clerk. She can help you get directed if you want to talk to her during
That's
business
'cause
hours,
this is
where to
all
go.
new and I'm trying to be
Yeah.
Yeah, no, good.
Thank you, I appreciate
The
all your-
website's very
The
complete.
more the merrier.
Just so you understand the regulations, yeah?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you this one, this has the last set of.
Yes.
Just so you understand, if you come up at public comment and speak to any commission on something that's not on the agenda, we cannot respond because it not fair to people who are not at the meeting
Yeah.
to have a discussion on a subject that they weren't prepared for.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's why you don't get an answer, but
Yeah,
Okay.
so it's not a back and forth. No, it's not a back and
No.
That's what
forth.
I'm learning, so
Correct.
next time. Okay.
Well, thank you, and thanks for your comments.
Thank you.
Okay, so minimum nights of stay, and so we had
30.
30
Gary said 30.
for Dan.
You should
Okay.
probably be calling the roll here.
I know, skipped over Ian.
Oh, and
Who's next,
Thurlow,
Dan?
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
What do you want? What number?
for minimum nights of stay.
Okay, this is hard for me because to me, if it's in a commercial area or mixed use, I don't know if there should be a minimum, but if you allow them in basic residential, I think it should be 30-day. Again, I think the beaches should come up with their own and enforce their own,
Yes.
whatever that is. The ones that already have their own zoning.
so are we writing in something on the bottom line?
It's-
I think she said 30 days.
30
That's what I
days?
heard.
Unless it's in mixed use or commercial, then I think
Then
30 is, 3 is
Okay.
fine.
Well, I
Three.
don't know that we're talking about.
I just can't hear her, so you
Okay,
she said
so
30 days.
your caveat is more of that, we'll capture this in the minutes, but your caveat is that this could differ depending
On
on,
what
if you actually
zone.
zoned,
Yes.
different areas
Yes.
differently, correct, okay.
That's actually an interesting point, that you could have a different cap in a commercial zone than you did in a residential
Yes.
zone.
Maybe we could add a line.
Yeah.
So how about,
I mean, my assumption is we're talking about residential zones when I'm answering these questions.
You're right.
Mine too.
I'm not talking
That was
about
my
a
assumption.
motel down the end of the
Right.
street
Yeah.
or
Okay.
somebody on Main Street
Okay.
or anything like
All
that.
right.
That's
We
my
don't care
thought
about
process.
all right, but your points, yeah, exactly, points taken very well here,
Residential.
yes, okay. Write this, Gary.
I already did.
What'd
30.
you do? You did
30-day
30.
minimum.
Okay, and same for me, so,
30 days for you, Ann?
yes,
And,
it's
and
the
Gary also?
closest thing.
Chikello.
But again, that would be different if I'm gravitating to, something different in section 1, which, I seem to gravitate from one to the other. Okay.
So 30 with a question mark.
You could do that, Paul, that's fine.
Mr. Ferrugia.
I'm going to stick to consistency, which isn't normally my strong suit, but I'm going to say no minimums for STRs or LTRs.
Okay.
I have 2 check marks here. I have no minimum STR, LTRs treated as equal class, which I think you're gonna have to do on zoning anyway. But I could live with a 3-day minimum for SDRs if certain neighborhoods decided to do that and eliminate the one-night party issue.
Yeah, right. Okay. And Greg?
No minimum.
No minimum.
My commercial side is taking over.
I know, I see that. There's a real trend.
I can tell you John's is
We know, I know, we don't have to ask, yeah, that, we know he's gonna be consistent on that question.
Well, he's gonna say 7 days, right?
Yeah, yeah, number 2 for sure.
Yeah,
We could
that
just-
was his.
We should just write that in there.
I'll just put that in
No,
right
I think
now.
you're right. I think we should just do it. Okay. Alrighty, fine. All right, question on the reverse side is the permitting process, that's where we're at.
So the first one here was, again, status quo. That's where we are right now. STRs are not allowed, there is no permits required.
I got straight down at the end again. I went for line number 4, permits for LTRs and STRs, safety inspections. And again, I'm thinking residential neighborhoods.
I checked that one also, although I'm not sure about long-term rentals, but definitely short-term rentals.
Which, I'm sorry, which one did Dan, Dan?
4th one down.
4th one down. So the permits for LTRs and STRs, safety inspections?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. And Ann?
I
Sorry.
did that one as well.
Okay, so we'll put you for that. Okay. And Gary?
Oh, move on, I'm reading it, I haven't read it.
Oh, go ahead. Oh, I can do it. I'm going to say the last one permit allowed for individual party or entity, even though some of the rest I agree with. I actually, when I would see that in a set of regulations, I liked it. I liked the idea. It was a way of allowing short-term rentals, but not being overrun or being overrun by corporate STRs. So, that's kind
I
of
guess I don't understand what we're trying to say by number 5 there, I guess, based on what you're saying.
That, I pulled that from several towns that we surveyed that had that. Lyme's in particular had very good language about not wanting to get a syndicate in or a family that had multiple households in a neighborhood.
Oh, so this is saying one person cannot have 5 different.
Yeah,
ones.
it doesn't exclude you having another choice. Like for me on this one, I do like 1 permit per individual, but I also like permits for LTRs and STRs.
Yeah, it seems like
with
if you
safety
select this, you'd have to
inspections.
select one of the other ones as well on how you do the permit, right? Okay.
Okay. So for you, Gary, you
For
want,
me,
you
it's
wanted
4 and 5.
4 and 5. Okay. And Paul, how about you on that?
So I don't like any of these.
Okay.
So I would just say no permits for either short-term rentals or long-term rentals. And I'd deal with this issue under the registration issue in the next section. And I didn't get what Gary C. said here.
I haven't voted
He
yet.
hasn't voted.
Oh, I see. I'm
He's
sorry.
sort of studying the options here.
How about Greg?
Yeah, Greg, how about you on this one?
I'm gonna say permits for LTRs and STRs, which I think I said a year ago, October,
Yes.
and safety inspections.
Okay.
And I also like number 5, but for a different reason.
Oh, go ahead.
I
Yes.
think if people have more than 1 permit or more than 1 registration, in Paul's vernacular, that we then treat them as a business. Once they go past 1 registration, they are now a business, a money-making opportunity, and they are taxed and regulated by the town in a separate way.
Okay.
Say that again?
That's interesting.
It's interesting. I don't know how we would
Greg, say that
affect
say that again?
I don't know if I can. So So I know what the original, I know what you were trying to get, that if somebody wants more than one permit, that they're, a business, and we don't want to do that. Can't have more than one permit. But you can get around that. I mean, you can have your brother get a permit, you have your sister get a permit, But if a family or some group has more than one permit, to me, that basically says, yo, I'm a business, look at me, and treat me differently. Tax me, do whatever you're going to do, but treat me like a business that I am. Like a hotel.
Greater than one permit defined as a business is what you're advocating.
Right.
Okay.
I don't know what the distinction is.
Well, it would seem to be an assessor's issue, right? I mean, we've had those discussions, but it would.
Pretty nominal,
Yeah.
personal property.
Well, but I'm not,
Bands.
so I'm not,
But you're saying that you would characterize it differently, and you would consider
Yes.
it a full business.
yes. And I'd say that, we've had hotel owners come in and talk, because they also own short-term rentals. And I suspect that they're regulated, and I'm not, an expert on this by any means, differently.
Well, they would be taxed as commercial properties.
Agreed.
By the
Yeah,
assessor.
whatever the regulations are for boarding houses or hotels or multiple, I would basically lump them all under one building, even though they would all be separate domiciles.
So even though they own two houses in a residential zone, you're saying, oh, they're business, and now, what are you trying to do? Change, like, spot zoning and say now we have a commercial property within a residential zone? I think that's gonna cause all kind of trouble. But I don't know anything about it.
Hey, I'm just saying I like number 5 for
It
that
sounds
reason.
strange.
Everything I say sounds
I
strange.
get
my
your sentiment, because
Right.
this has been a
It
big
does.
issue with short-term rentals. Is are they
Sentiment.
businesses? Are they not? And John Salino often talks about the line crossed. When a corporation comes and buys up 3, 4, 5 properties and wants to rent them as STRs, that's a different scenario than someone saying, I need to pay my property taxes, I
Right.
would like to rent for
Right.
the summer.
And again, that's always been the problem from the start, is,
Yes.
we all have neighbors who have done this for generations, part-time, academic rentals, whatever you call it, and now all of a sudden we've got people that are
Yeah.
doing this full-time.
Keep your thought, because there may have been creative ways of dealing with that. I don't have the answer to that right now, but
Yeah, I don't
I
either.
think it's a good thought, Okay.
So I'm probably gonna regret saying this.
We were doing so well,
But
Paul.
I have two residential properties, two properties in a commercial zone. One is a residential, the other has 3 rents. I am treated differently by the town with the 3 rental than I am with the single rental, even though they're abutting property. The assessor treats it differently, the reporting is differently, everything is different. That's just an FYI how the town is treating long-term rentals in all of those. I don't do short-term rentals in any of those. One is a commercial rent, the other 2 are apartments in one of the
Are
buildings.
they in a commercial zone?
They happen to be in a commercial zone.
So what
that's different.
Greg is advocating, you are actually experiencing.
Well, that's different than
Kind of, sort
Kind of.
But
Kind of,
Gary's,
sort of.
Gary's right, it's in a commercial zone as opposed
Yeah.
to,
Yeah.
all of a sudden we've got a
Right.
business in a
Right.
But I
residential
was-
zone, which is,
I was just saying that the mechanism
No,
that
right,
the
right,
town
right.
has for dealing
It
with
exists.
is
Yeah.
established
Yes.
because
Right.
of that
To do
situation. That's all I'm saying.
your annual income and expense.
And tell me, I
whatever.
have to fill
Right,
all
I
that
don't
out.
fill- You have to fill it out with.
Even though they're both in a commercial zone, I don't have to do all of that with the residential.
Okay, you just don't have that existing for
So
other
then, see,
residential situations.
now what you're talking about is if you have a bed and breakfast under his scenario, which are allowed in every residential zone
Right,
in East Lyme,
correct.
that you can have up to 7 rentals in there, then how do you deal with that? That's more than one rental, although it's one building, just like I have more than one rental in one building.
right, but,
You know-
bed and breakfasts are already regulated, they're already zoned, they already have their
Yeah,
rules and
that-
regulations set.
I mean,
But
those
you're
can
gonna
be,
say you have a
amended.
7 rental bed and breakfast, and you have one person owns
But-
2 houses and is short-term rentals, I think you're gonna run into some
I
conversational
think
issues.
we're gonna run into all
Yeah.
kinds of issues.
One way or the other, I'm just an
Yeah.
FYI, I'm not advocating one way or the other.
okay. All right, we'll move on to the annual.
Well, I don't know if everyone
Oh,
voted on
did
the
you vote?
perm.
You
I
didn't
know
vote on this.
I know Gary didn't.
And
I don't have a Formica, Ferrugia
wait a minute.
myself, unless I'm deaf and I'm not hearing people.
Oh, I'm
Formica-
sorry.
Sorry.
Formica said no permits for either,
Yes,
which is
so-
not on this list.
Right.
So
So
you,
it's kind of a
No
modification of the
permits.
first line. No permits required for LTRs or STRs.
So that was Gary, that was Paul or Gary?
That's Paul.
that's Paul.
Oh, all right. And Gary Ferrugia?
I'm permits for LTRs and STRs
Yes.
with safety inspections,
Yes.
and one permit allowed for
Yeah, both of
individual party
those.
or entity.
All right, so I am number one, no short-term rentals allowed, no permits for LTRs, since we're overstepping on that.
Dr. Doom down there.
Okay,
Okay.
maybe not.
I mean, I could check that as well, but I'm gonna, if there's permitting ever to happen and it, even if there's a limited, there's a limited ban or something like that, I like the idea of limiting the permits, one permit per individual or entity.
Now, that causes, there seems to be an effort or a desire to have not many regulations on the numbers of these things allowed. But at the same time, everyone wants to put all kind of regulations on these folks. That's kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, that is.
Seems a little inconsistent to
You're
me.
not hearing that from me.
I'm going to look at the check marks.
You would hear it from me, except he's in the way.
I know.
All right, go ahead. Let's do annual permitting.
Yes, annual rental permit information. Let's just take a look, take a minute to just read down that list if you have.
And this
refresh
one
your-
obviously is not, it's not individually, I only want this one. It's multiple, it addresses
Yeah, yeah,
multiple things.
I can go first if you want.
And I'm ready to go as well.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Well,
go
let's-
for it, Dan.
Yeah, no, go for
I
it.
got checks everywhere except for 4, 7, and 8.
So checks everywhere.
Where are you checking?
1, 2, 3.
Okay, I'll say owner's
4.
name and address, yes. Emergency contact, yes. Property site plan, floor plan, yes. No to interior, exterior photos. Number of bedrooms and beds, yes. Number of on-site parking spaces, yes, definitely. I don't know the signed affidavit. I think that would be our job as the town to determine that, whether they met the zoning requirements or not. And list of rental services, I don't think that's any our beeswax. And safety inspection certificate, yes.
Okay.
I vote exactly the same way.
Oh,
I know I'm
okay,
jumping
that's
out of
easy
turn,
enough.
Just keep it
Okay,
easy.
So 1, 2, 3, skip, 1, 2, skip, and skip to the end, okay.
3 skip 1, 3 skip 1, 1. Right?
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Who's next? Who would like to go next?
Oh,
Ann, would you like to go
I had 1, 2, and 9, the last one.
1, 2, and
2.
9.
Is 9 the last one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's too much, like, you can't
I did the
enforce
same
that.
as Ann. 1, 2, and 9.
Mine is the same as Dan's and Greg's,
Okay.
with the addition of signed affidavit of compliance with zoning regs. I was looking at that as an enforcement issue, depending on how muscular we want to be with the enforcement. And
Okay.
what compelled me on that was, you've referenced several times the Gravitas, what's the name of the company?
Oh, a Granicus.
Granicus. That they say they have a 10%.
Oh,
compliance
non-compliance
with
rate,
this.
yes.
And
Compliance rate.
If we're going to do this and it's going to be meaningful, I think we should have some teeth to it. And to me, a signed affidavit is teeth.
I think if you do signed affidavits, you're gonna open up a can of worms, because you gotta get into commercial, you'll have to get into long-term rental, you'll have to get into every zoning regulation that exists in the thing. You're gonna have, somebody says, okay, I'm gonna do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't quite agree with that, but I do have 1 and 2, and then, you know, the rest are equal with long-term rentals. If you're gonna make a long-term rental, do a property site plan, or interior photos, or number of bedrooms, or on-site parking, you know, then I think that's where you go with short-term rentals. But I also call it a registration and not a permit.
So Paul, you were 1 and 2, and that was it?
I'm 1 and 2, and then the rest can be equal with whatever your long-term rental
Okay.
descriptions are gonna be.
I got you.
Because
Okay.
I think that's gonna be the issue in zoning. I don't think you're gonna be able to do one and not do the other for any number of these questions.
Just so I can address, I didn't vote for the affidavit, but I think the affidavit could be, I agree that there's too many regulations and whatnot. The affidavit could have a list of things that you've complied with, that the town
Yeah.
considers, you know, relevant,
Right.
whatever it is. I
Yeah,
don't know.
even based
Check
on what you
boxes.
just,
From,
I'm sorry?
the form should have check boxes. Do
Yeah,
you meet
yeah.
this? Do you meet this? Do you meet this?
Right.
yeah.
If you have a registration form, sometimes when you, in other issues, when you sign your name on the bottom of the registration form,
Same
there's a
thing.
little thing
Right.
on the top that says, "We own you, we're gonna do whatever you want." You know, and you agree by signing this form, you know? So.
All right, fair enough. Everyone vote?
Okay. No.
Ann.
And
Me.
Hold them back.
I know. Okay. So, I actually put, have you voted? I mean, did you?
I did.
You did. I think I put you.
I did 1, 2, and 9.
Let me see. 1, 2, and 9, which is the last one, right?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't, again, this all is all dependent on, definitely 1, definitely 2, and I will hold off on the rest, because, you know, whether we're having permitting or not, you know, I think if we have it, I don't have any problem except with this one about services used to advertise. And I don't have a problem with the affidavit if we're clear what precisely you're signing the affidavit for, which is what should be happening with a properly drawn affidavit. So, yeah, but definitely my focus would be on emergency contact and basic information.
All
I
right.
think any permitting system's gotta be, if it exists, gotta be super streamlined.
So you're 1 and 2.
Yeah, for now.
Zoning regs.
Zoning regs, yes.
So what, Gary, just explain this.
what, the line that says signed affidavit of compliance?
No,
No,
the next
zoning
block.
Oh, I'm
regulations,
sorry. Okay, got
occupancy.
it. So,
Yeah, that's a general category, right?
so the
Yeah,
thought
yeah.
here was, if we do an ordinance, it would be a permit or registration that applies to the entire town. The zoning regs would be also for the town, but it would address the number of beds allowed per bedroom or number of parking spaces allowed, all those things. So if you had them in the permit, then you've got zoning regulations that say, well, this guy doesn't have any off-street parking, but he wants to have 6 people in the house, so who's gonna say that's okay or not okay? So, number of beds, it seems like almost every permit that I looked at, and I looked at about a dozen, it either was beds or bedrooms that determined occupancy rates.
Oh, I see what you mean.
You're just interested in what we
what are you
think
checking
we should
on?
use as the occupancy number,
Yeah.
what it should be based on. except for the last one there, that you say minors prohibited from renting.
Yeah, and that,
It's a totally separate thing.
right.
I'm sorry, Dan, to ask you, but
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm
your
talking to my
voice just
paper again.
escapes me all the way down
Yeah,
there, so.
it's hard. I can't-
What I'm saying is, it seems like what
We got
this,
two in.
what is this section asking for is, how do we determine what the max occupancy is for this
Yeah.
particular short-term rental?
Correct.
And I guess I'll lead it off and I'll say that I just wanted to use based on number of bedrooms. And I do agree that minors should be prohibited from renting.
But they can stay there.
I think what we're trying to do is stay away from the situation over here where there was, it was rented basically to minors.
Yes,
Okay?
like,
That's what we're trying to do with that statement there.
yes, the minors being the people who are renting, actually, the renters. Without supervision of a.
I'm not sure
of a
that it fits here
non-minor.
underneath this banner of zoning regulations occupancy, but that's how I feel about it.
Okay.
That one, just a comment on that, this I have seen in most of these regulatory systems that the municipalities have come up with, where the minors are prohibited from being the point person renting the property. They can stay there, but they can't be the person that enters the agreement with the,
It's probably talking to prom nights and graduation
yes,
nights.
yes,
those
and
types of
inviting that
places.
kind of
Yeah.
stuff that you don't want, right, exactly. Okay.
Did you vote?
Not yet,
Oh, I'll vote.
okay.
Based on number of bedrooms per the field card in the tax assessor's office. So this way, an owner of a STR can't say, "Oh, I got beds in
In the
every
hallway.
room in the house."
Yes, yes.
This hallway is a bedroom.
Yeah, really. We
So
can sleep
based on the field card,
we can sleep in the mudroom, okay.
because this whole business is whatever. So that and minors prohibited from
Okay.
renting. That seems to be, they can't anyway.
No.
Oh, and,
Oh, not yet. But it's actually same as Gary.
okay. I will say if you're doing this type of regulation, yes, definitely the bedrooms, number of bedrooms, and then minors prohibited, and then maximum number of guests. Yeah, I'm gonna say yes to that.
What isn't that? I don't understand. Isn't that based on the number of bedrooms? There's gonna be a
So,
maximum?
That's what I think.
but
There
yeah.
are some towns that set a maximum number. Preston originally did. I'm not sure if they still do. Lyme does.
So if you have 12 bedrooms, the town might say you can only have 8 people in there.
I think Lyme's was
Yeah.
6.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
I've seen that,
understand
and it's had some appeal to me, so,
Good.
yeah, okay. All right, and, how about, let's see, who else has
Gary,
it?
did you go?
Gary, yes.
I'm going with based on number of bedrooms and minors prohibited also.
Okay,
So again, I'm minors prohibited, and then I think the zoning regulations speak to the other ones under different sections that call for different uses. So I think if we added a definition under any of these number of sections for short-term rentals, all of the ones that would be necessary would fall into place. Number of bedrooms, maximum number of guests would probably fall somewhere there, but I don't think we need to set the maximum
no,
guests.
no, it's
Just as a
suggested topic.
as a practical
Yeah.
matter, you set the net, when you're putting these things out for rentals, 99% of the people set the maximum number. I have maximum numbers of people that we allow. I have maximum number of cars that we allow, you know, just to make sure they fit on the property and all that. That's all set. To the woman's comment about background checks, there are background checks that we go through based on historical use of short-term rentals. I don't know if they've been arrested or whatever, but I do know how many times they've rented from me or anybody else. And whether they're a good renter or not, there are grading systems that are on both Airbnb
Right.
VRBO. So that's kind of a background check. So,
Okay. All right. And,
so anyway, definitely one, and then long-term rentals are gonna be a question mark on this.
So Greg McIntyre, you need to vote on that one,
yes.
if you want to.
Well, certainly minors prohibited from renting. I would say based on number of bedrooms, I agree with Dan Beachy on that, but I have a note here to myself that say, well, in a perfect world, this would dictate the number of guests allowed. Enforcement, as always, is going to be the issue. And the question is that our problem? Or do we make our recommendation and let it be the Board of Selectmen's problem?
Well, there are a lot of five-star short-term rental owners, from what we've heard. So enforcement, I would imagine that enforcement, the first level of enforcement is a five-star rental owner, period.
Yep.
They are part of the equation.
Yes.
And I've never heard of a four-star rental owner coming to any of these things, only five stars. So East Lyme is very lucky about that. So we may not even need an enforcement
Nothing but
officer.
the best.
Is it 5 out of 5? Or
5 out of 5.
Yeah.
5 out of 100. Yeah, that's me. I'm that person.
All right. Okay, so everyone's voted, and I'm not sure how John Selena will vote, but we'll check it out. Okay. Zoning regulations, noise, okay?
I'll go after this one first. I don't understand why we would try and tell people what they can or can't do there. I think we need to enforce the noise ordinance as it is for everybody else that lives in East Lyme. And I know the police say that they can't afford to get a noise meter and teach their people how to use it, but that's not our problem. I think
No.
we should just enforce the noise ordinance.
Yeah, we need to.
All three of these were plucked from other towns.
So that means that if I rent the place, I can't have a party,
Correct.
but
Right.
if I live there, I can have a party next door.
That is correct.
And who defines what a party is? You know, I'm a party all by myself sometimes. Mainly because everybody else left, but I'll leave that for your imagination.
I think it's centered, if I may, I think it's centered around having an outdoor event that creates noise and a disruption. And I've seen this language repeatedly. It's not always exactly like this, but language pretty much like this. You know, you really can't have a banquet or reception. Greg, in your own beach communities regulations, you all have that that clause in there that you don't come to party basically if you're going to do a short-term rental. You can have you can apply for an exception. So, like in the case of your association.
Basically, all that takes is a phone call to the president of the association.
Okay. But these are very commonly seen in the sets of regulations that you've been exposed to and that we've looked at. That's nothing unusual there.
I would still like to consider adding a fourth thing, enforce the noise ordinance as written.
What is the fourth thing?
Enforce the noise ordinance.
Or and, well, oh, yeah.
I think, I mean, I didn't write, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree with Dan. I think if the town enforces parking and noise, what we already have on the books, that should cover it.
I read this, I mean, I didn't write it, but the intent, I believe, is not to create venues for events.
Yeah.
They'd had that issue in Norwich where there was an owner, she bought a number of properties and was having weddings and, in residential areas. So the sentiment is good, but we probably already have rules
Yeah.
about this.
I interviewed the Lyme zoning enforcement officer, this was a major issue in their town because they have some large estates that are
Beautiful.
wedding reception areas.
Right.
I think if I were to adopt some, or recommend certain zoning regulations, I would at least cover this topic in some way, because the biggest issue that seems to be problematic, and in everyone's face, so to speak, about short-term rentals is the possibility that you'll have a party house. This was the Whibby case.
Right.
This is exactly what happened in Whibby. So, and what happens in Norwich and in other communities. So, I agree, to me, there's no reason why our noise ordinance should not be, should be enforced, however they want to do it with the appropriate equipment. But, yeah, for sure, that has to be done, as well as the parking ordinances that we have, adhere to those. But there should be some statement in there about, not having a party house. This is what
I
you're
agree with
checking
all
three?
3 of them.
I'm just gonna, I guess I'll have to say yes to all 4, because now we've done enforced noise ordinance
4, there you go.
under Dan's suggestions. So 1, 2, 3, 4, I will go if I were to regulate.
Okay.
And Dan, you just want to enforce the noise ordinance?
Yes, ma'am. Yep.
Okay, and then Ann Thurlow,
To me, if you enforce noise and parking, it would cover these things, but maybe I'm wrong.
okay.
The parking's next.
I mean, you could have an outdoor event with 4 people that's very quiet.
Yeah, I
mean,
know.
Right. But the idea needs to be addressed.
Right,
Yeah.
Okay,
somewhere.
next one.
Okay, and then what about the rest of us?
We all agree
We
on
all
that.
agree, basically, then no. Wow, that's
we all-
really, that's pretty
So what
good.
are we all
What are
agreeing
we
to?
agreeing
Enforcing,
to?
enforcing
I
the
think
existing noise
We agree
ordinance.
that
Yeah.
we
We want the noise ordinance
and parking.
enforced.
are not looking to create wedding venues and big party houses. Yes or no?
We want to avoid that,
Paul?
however that is best done.
Here I go again, right? I mean, when my daughter got married 6 years ago, there was a big, beautiful house on the river in Old Lyme that rented out the house, the grounds. We parked 100 cars on the grounds. We put a big tent on the ground. We were inspected. We're allowed to, the wedding party was allowed to stay in the house the night before. The bridesmaids or whatever stayed there, and we had the house for 2 days and the whole thing. And then that, I paid quite a bit of money for that opportunity. But I guess technically it would be considered a short-term rental.
Mhm.
And nobody from Old Lyme, zoning or anything else, had anything negative to say about that.
Well, they can do it
So-
in all line.
So I don't,
So
No,
what are
I'm
you
just
going to
saying,
put
so
for
if
check
there's a
marks, though, is
house-
what we're
Right,
asking.
that's what we want to
if there's
know.
a similar house situation here that somebody may be doing that, I don't know if they are.
So it sounds like you're saying you can do what you want, provide music, loudspeakers, outdoor events, parties, banquets, but do you want to enforce the noise ordinance as written for this?
Well, I think the noise ordinance and the parking that, we've had this discussion the whole year plus we've been here. If those were enforced properly, then most of these problems don't exist.
So do we want, so are we putting you down for a check mark for enforced noise ordinance, or no check marks at all here?
No,
Just trying to find out, that's all.
I'm just quite not through with what I was saying.
Okay,
So, that, that's fine, but I do and have consistently advocated noise ordinances and parking regulations being enforced. I think to Ann T's point, that's part of where we are. I agree also with her, you can't say no parties, banquets, or receptions because you're not identifying the number. You can say no parties, banquets, or receptions in the house that I own of 10 or more becomes problematic, so we're not going to have 100 or whatever. So I'm just putting out for information that those houses exist. And whether they exist in East Lyme, I don't know. But,
Okay.
so noise and whatever else, you can do amplified music and loudspeakers in Oak Grove, maybe? That might be the only place.
Yeah, we really enjoy it.
Yeah.
It's really,
So,
what we're all about. No, I mean, whoever made the comment that, I'm going to tell the short-term renters they can't have a party, but in the same breath, I'm going to turn around and invite everybody in the neighborhood to my house for a big party.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just disingenuous to say one can, one can't.
I disagree. It's not disingenuous.
Of course you do, and I would go I would go on to say that I would like to enforce existing noise ordinance. We call the police when there's noise. They come, they address the situation, and they say, turn it down, and they go away. 10 minutes later, it's just as bad as it was. You call them again, and then they say, well, we already did that. And there's no more we can do.
Unless they take people to the Blue Light Lounge.
Yeah, exactly. And we have a really nice new blue light lounge, so I think that's probably appropriate. But yeah, I think enforcing the existing noise ordinance would go a long way in addressing something.
I think there's a distinction in that a resident may have a party infrequently, whereas a short-term rental property that's identified as a party home or venue, then that becomes a constant annoyance to people who live there. So there's a distinction. But we can move on to the next.
So if we can just get some check marks on here, I think that's the only thing we're trying to do.
Okay.
Right?
All right, so,
Parking we just talked about.
you
Oh,
wanted,
yeah,
so,
gotta put it in.
so, how about this? Can we summarize this noise issue? So basically, everyone is in agreement on enforcing the noise ordinance in our town. A little bit different opinion on the ability of short-term renters to party or not party. So I think, does that summarize what we just heard? I think that's fair enough,
Sounds good to me.
without going through the check marks because,
Right.
for
It's
different
fair.
things.
Check marks are hard.
Fair enough?
We're on the same page.
Okay. But points taken.
Parking.
Parking. So the two choices, no off-street parking, all parking on site, and the off-street parking allowed, limited to one vehicle.
I have to agree with Ann Thurlow. We have an ordinance about, the police commission is in charge of parking. And unless you have signs posted that say no on-street parking, they're not going to enforce it. So, we need to enforce, and for example, the street down in front of me is pretty narrow, and I've threatened several times to go to the police commission and try to get them to put signs up. I haven't gone through with it yet. I'll probably go to the Oak Grove Beach board and say I want to do this and see what they say. But I think if it's done correctly, we can use the police commission to enforce parking where it's an issue. There are other places where on-street parking might be okay. Dan Salino might be, I don't know, sensitive to that, or he might say no, or I don't know if you guys allow it or what. In Black Point.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of spots you can't, there's just not around.
Right. Right, but somebody enforces that?
They hire, like during the summer, they actually hire town police to go.
I know, and every time I hear that, it just grates on me, that you have to hire our own town police to enforce your,
Yeah,
hopefully that's overtime for them.
It is.
it's paid, it's separate job, they just do it in the summertime, because that's when it's an issue usually.
Yeah.
I think the parking issue goes hand in hand with the occupancy issue.
Absolutely.
If you keep occupancy down, maybe the number of vehicles, but they could have visitors.
Yes.
So I've heard a lot of evidence about problems with parking. I don't know how to fix that problem. I don't know, in my neighborhood, you can park wherever you want to park.
And
Mom
also
wants
in
to be there.
Giants Neck, Beach, there is no parking on the street by the association's bylaws and the association's ordinances, regulations. And it's self-enforced. There is even an issue when somebody comes and they're putting in a system requiring large,
Trucks or something.
construction vehicles who have to park on the street. The gray area is you're not supposed to do that, but people overlook that. But So the parking is enforced by the members of the association for the most part. And if it doesn't, then the police come and they read, it's not allowed here, you can't park here.
But
On
to
the street.
Gary's point, in a number of the towns that we looked at, parking was directly related to occupancy. That if you were authorized for 6 people, all 6 of those people had to be able to park on site. So, and there was no off-street parking.
Well, it's very-
Others allowed, 1 vehicle to be off-street.
Yeah.
Some of them were silent on it.
Yeah.
But it seemed to me like the most complaints we heard related to noise and parking.
And especially parking, it seems, more
Yeah.
than noise
Right.
in many instances. Okay. Yeah.
So you have a commercial spot downtown with an apartment above. The apartment gets an Airbnb, and parking is allowed on the street right in front for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. If you say parking must be on site,
What do you do? That's a very good point.
how do you bring the police commission in and say, the guy's not parking on site, but he's parking right in the very front?
Right.
I think Dan kind of hit that when he said we're really more concerned with residential areas as opposed to commercial. So, I mean, I don't know. No parking, no off-street parking. That's how I'll vote.
I just put where allowed. Coming down Giants Neck Road, they put no parking signs.
I think the
Because
key
people
about
were parking there and going into the Rocky Neck State
Oh,
Park.
okay. Oh.
So there's no parking signs listed on that. That's a town road in a residential area.
No, you're right. It has to be signs.
So
but it,
how about, and that's part of our parking ordinance as well. So I think this is very similar to the noise topic.
Right.
well, I don't
Well,
think it is. I think this is different because by the time that people get here, they can change the noise. By the time they get here, if they don't know that they're limited to how many cars they can have here,
Yeah.
there's not much they can do about it other than they're just going to park wherever it looks like that's an open spot, right? And I hear you about the signs should be up, but the police can come and ticket you even if there's not a sign if it's an unsafe parking, right? If you're at a 3-way intersection and you're parking on one side, it's just an unsafe place. And I know this from personal experience.
do that?
Okay? So, so in any case, so I think in this case, I think we need to have a regulation for parking that goes with the short-term rentals. To say, hey, your property can support this many cars and that has to be clear. Right? I don't know. So I'm a long check mark on the first line there.
You're in the
Okay.
first one?
Okay.
I'm with you now, brother.
I agree with that. I just would still want to see that we're utilizing that the parking ordinance that we have, which is pretty extensive and could solve some of these other issues. We've talked about that. I feel like the town hasn't been advancing both the noise ordinance or the parking ordinance, even though we've pointed it out, we've talked about it, we pointed it out directly to the Board of Selectmen. So I think there's kind of no excuse about the parking issue. So for me, it's no off-street parking, keep it clean, and please enforce the parking ordinance. To get some of the communities that have more of the short-term rentals to come in and deal with police commission and anything else under the parking ordinance as well. So.
All right, let's forge ahead. It's 9
Yes,
o'clock.
yes,
Ann
yes.
Thurlow, which one?
I think we should enforce the parking ordinance we have.
Parking ordinance, all right.
All right, so we'll make that a category, okay?
All right, Mr. Ferrugia.
No off-street parking. All parking must be on site.
Paul?
I am where parking is allowed off-street. I don't know that we can regulate against that, but, I try to confine all mine on-site, so
Be on
either way
All right,
it's
so-
fine with me.
We'll put you there, okay.
It should be on street.
It should be on-street parking. No on-street
Yes,
parking.
I think you meant,
Oh, you're right.
Yes.
You're right.
Greg,
yes, I kept looking, yeah, okay.
Greg, there's two
I agree
choices.
with Ann Thurlow.
and
Okay.
the parking ordinance.
Who do you agree with? And
Okay.
third,
Which is,
Annual permit
Which is
inspection
enforced
fees, oh
parking.
goodness.
Okay.
Let me just explain here. We're really only looking at three different options that I put in here. One is a very modest approach on permits. One is a more moderate, where there would be inspections, random enforcement. And one is a more muscular thing that would have a rental officer or somebody designated who would proactively monitor this and would be able to yank permits from miscreants.
Okay.
So should we vote minimum, moderate, muscular?
Yeah,
Yes.
Yes.
That's
otherwise we'll
probably
be here all
the
night
best
for
way to
every one of
go.
these slots.
Yeah, no, I think I just, that I kind of, when I looked at it, I just picked a category.
Right.
I'll vote minimum.
And I agree with that, yeah. That's my choice as well, so.
I knew you would. I vote moderate.
Moderate. Let's see, you are over here, Greg, okay.
I vote moderate, but not just random when there's a problem. Like, not just picking people out randomly to inspect, but if someone calls in with a complaint, that's when you inspect.
You could say random and for cause, like we do with the drug testing over at the nuclear plant, right? Random enforcement and for cause, which means call in, right?
So what do you,
Are you
minimum, moderate, or muscular?
I'm just trying to answer what Ann was trying to
No,
say.
we got you, yeah, yeah.
Yourself, yes.
We're just trying to move it along.
What? Move it along? I don't get to say a story with my answer? No?
Story.
Okay, moderate.
All right.
Moderate, okay, that's here. Okay,
did you vote, Gary? Yeah,
Minimum.
yeah,
you're minimum.
I don't like to squeeze the residents.
I vote muscular.
Tough.
You go, Gary.
okay.
Who was the muscular one there?
Gary.
It's,
Gary.
Gary.
Sure, no,
Frucci.
I just sort of looked over there. Okay, got it.
The outlier, the perpetual outlier.
Well, I actually have it, I had that checked to begin with too, Gary, so I'm kind
I
of
really like the
wishy-washy.
muscular, but I think what's gonna happen is if we go moderate, that it will evolve into muscular, because
I agree.
if it's required, we're gonna have to hire a full-time person, the fees are gonna have to go up, and on and on and on.
Yeah, a little
But,
slippery slope there, yeah.
you know, if everybody's well-behaved, we can stay with moderate for a long time.
Please change mine to muscular, whoever's keeping track.
You can't see
I
it.
got
Dan, you changed to muscular?
I just did, yes.
Okay.
Oh, wait, Dan is now over here, okay, Dan, so we will move you from moderate, okay.
Ann, you want to vote on this one?
And Ann?
I did moderate.
Oh, moderate.
Yes.
Oh, I wrote you down.
Paul?
Did Ann?
Yeah,
Yes.
she's moderate.
Oh,
And Santoro,
no, I haven't.
minimum.
Yes, I said minimum.
Minimum, okay. So I am minimum, but there's a couple in minimum that I don't agree with, so.
Those, I just put those in as
Yeah,
examples.
okay, just,
Yeah.
Just general categories.
Yeah.
What did
I
he
know
say?
we wanna
Did he
get
say
out of
moderate?
here,
I'm
so-
sorry.
He said minimum.
Minimum, okay.
How about Greg?
I said moderate.
Oh, you did.
And
And
Greg,
Thanks for asking.
moderate, okay. All right, so we at least,
This was good.
this was a very good exercise. Thank you again,
So,
Gary.
how many more meetings are we going to do?
Well, that's my number 7, which is a timeline for reaching final recommendations, and then the bit of drafting of an addendum that has to happen, and then I was thinking one shot on that, so there's a writing, and I don't mind doing that writing of the addendum that reflects this and everything else we've been talking about, and then one shot at, if you want to change this, change that, and what's been written, that addendum, so it doesn't go on, and reflects, what our thinking is.
So are we going to do an addendum before we do a public hearing?
So we should, because then there is at least a position or positions that we are presenting.
We're gonna have a third public hearing?
We have to,
We have to.
by our charge.
We only had that second, Greg, that second public hearing because we just felt as though we had, a slice of the pie, and we just wanted a second opportunity for people to come. So that was we could have as many as we want, actually, but we are required one sort of at the beginning of the process, one at the end of the process.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the public hearing, is it really gonna be different than, and there's more info out there?
Yes. Yes.
Are we gonna have options, or the public can just tell us whatever they wanna say?
I think you present this addendum, you write the addendum, again, we edit once, one fell swoop editing, and that is what is put out there, and, you again invite people to read the first report, the status report, and here is the addendum to that status report. And we'd like your input, particularly on our more conclusory opinions and recommendations. We had some recommendations in the initial one, but these are where we are at now. Post WIBI, post state statute.
So big picture is create a document that we present to the public, then have a public hearing with a discussion on that.
With the intention of going to the Board of Selectmen as a
Yes.
recommendation.
Right.
Okay.
And
And
we
if
can,
they change that, then we come back and maybe everybody agrees, they had a great point, we ought to add or
yes,
subtract something
yes.
from our addendum
That's-
before we put it forward.
That's the second editing, if you will. Right, the first editing is you guys looking at what was been written, and the second editing would be,
After the public
have you
hearing.
heard something in that public hearing
Okay.
that makes you want to make that point to the Board of Selectmen, or change the language that we've used, whatever.
So how many more meetings roughly? are we
12.
talking?
12.
So we have like one or two
So,
to come up with a draft?
yeah, I mean, I can, in a 2-week period max, I can write the addendum, okay?
Okay.
It's just, are we at that point of,
We need this compilation of this conversation.
Right,
Whether
right.
we're
Right.
charging Brooke to do that, or,
Well, I thought
you know,
Gary was
who-
doing it.
Did
I
Gary
can
do that?
compile
Yes.
these, but I
Yes.
think what we should be focusing on is what we do after it's compiled.
Yeah.
exactly,
And I think
exactly.
that might be where the debate is, because,
Yes.
there are a range of opinions.
Right, so maybe we need at least that meeting to assess what we have said tonight, digest it, and point out, we really do all agree on this, and here's where we, where we differ. So that the writing will be more straightforward, and I'm not driving myself crazy.
I'm free next week.
So we need a meeting to discuss the chart,
Yes.
right?
And tonight's,
And I think from the chart, we're going to have a set of recommendations eventually, that you will write your addendum from.
And some of it may be in the original document, some of
Yes.
this conversation.
yes,
Right? So
some of it is, some of it definitely is, and there will be things plucked
you
from
may
there.
want an entirely new document.
Right. So we need at least two more meetings before the public hearing, is what I'm hearing?
I would say more than that.
More than
Unless you think we can come
I
to a
think we have-
consensus on all of this
Oh, I see what you mean.
in one meeting? That's-
Well, I don't think there'll be consensus, and I don't think that's necessarily,
Yeah, we can have some differing viewpoints,
I think what we put forward to the Board of Selectmen, these are the conversations we had, this
Yes.
is what we
Yeah.
thought about it. Somebody was very strong about this, others were very strong about that.
right,
See what the public said, they're very strong about a third thing, and then we put it forward, and, you guys are gonna go through a
Yeah.
year and a half of this yourself. You know?
and also I'll go back to a point I made initially, because there are still a couple of things, obviously legally,
right,
that,
right.
as you well know, that we need answered. Those will be in there, just so that there's one bill to the town, and that we're not doing that review at this point, which again would take more time. So where we've identified a couple of areas where we need a legal opinion that would help answer, and come to decisions, that's on them. Board of Selectmen or zoning, whoever's gonna end up doing all of this work, to go ahead and get those opinions that are necessary. And I think we need to identify those, you know, for sure, because there are still looming things out there. And,
But we could suggest legal opinion may be required.
Right.
We don't have to go into all
No.
of it. We could just put
No.
that as an addendum on the report.
Yeah.
There are some things that may require legal opinions, and
Yeah.
let them figure out what.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I don't know if Mr. Marco will be here again, because he's retiring.
He's
You what?
He's retiring.
Huh?
okay.
Attorney Zamarka.
He's
So,
retired.
okay, so,
Zamarka.
all the more reason that if, you know, if you've got some issues out there, yeah, you're not gonna ask him at this point, you got 3 days left, please do an opinion.
We drove him out, this was his
Yeah,
last
this was,
official.
we probably
This is
did
it.
drive
Yeah.
him out.
He's had
I
enough.
don't know, I think he's doing some stuff, but I don't know,
That's a good
Okay.
way out. You can
Okay,
retire too.
so
I
again,
already
just
have.
as long as we identify the issues that would
Actually,
help
twice.
in their final decision-making, for sure, and there's only a few, but I think that's important in there as well. But so, once we get the minutes and we look at your compilation, I mean, I'm willing to meet for the next weeks and not skip, you know what I mean? Like if you wanna meet next Monday or something like that, I don't know if that's too soon, but I'm fine with that.
I think, given what we're gonna be doing at the next meeting, I think a week is fine.
Yeah, cause it's a roll, we're on a roll,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah.
And, rather than, you know, have a pause and forget everything, it's a good way to go.
So next Monday?
So next Monday
13th?
is
That sounds good.
Okay. Available.
is the 13th, right?
Yeah.
Yes, Monday.
Good.
Okay, I'm okay doing that. I'll let John know that too, yeah. And, yeah, good to, and we'll see how far we get, but that's, you know, I'm sure that will be provide me a good basis for writing, you know,
More power to you.
yeah.
All right.
There's always those dark
doing it
moments
at
where the
7 or-
pen doesn't move,
You do it
and
early.
then it goes
7?
7 o'clock again?
7 o'clock,
Okay.
right?
7's fine.
7.
All right. What are we wrapping up here?
So then we'll come back to number 7 and those types of the scheduling once we, at the end of the meeting next week. I think we'll do that. Okay?
Yep.
Anyone have a final comment, thought?
Brooke,
Yes, go ahead.
Brooke,
Yes, I'm sorry.
can you get a hold of John Celestino?
Celine, yeah.
Celino, I mean?
Yep,
And get his responses to this and
Yeah.
then feed them to me?
yep.
Great.
Yeah, that's great. And Brooke, is this room available next Monday?
Move we adjourn?
Not yet.
Um,
Nobody filed a motion.
yeah. Motion second.
Need a motion to adjourn.
I just did.
Oh, you did?
You
Oh,
guys give me 2 seconds?
Yes.
Let me go into my
That's fine.
computer in the clerk's office.
That's
because,
fine.
You know, like I said, sometimes stuff is not on the town calendar.
Okay, that's
We
fine.
haven't gotten the agenda yet, so I just wanna make sure that there's nothing else in this room.
Okay.
Okay.
And we can always meet, if possible, in the other room as well.
Did we
I have
vote
to
on-
tell you that I'm on my last page of this notebook, so we have to finish.
I'm close,
I'm
yeah.
I'm not buying another one of these. So we are closing
Right.
in.
Did we vote on Paul's motion to adjourn?
We have a motion and a second.
Okay,
All
so
in
Paul
favor?
and a second, okay, and so, all those
If
in
I had
favor?
known you were doing it by notebook, I would have bought you a notebook.
Really?
10 pages.
Really didn't know.
Okay,
All
so
right.
let me just,
It was a productive
hang on,
meeting.
hang on, guys.
We have to wait for.
We are
She's just gonna